You're listening to the Growth Stories podcast, a show where we interview business owners, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders to hear their stories about how they've grown and scaled their businesses to amazing heights. I'm your host, Ben Landers, and in today's episode, I'm with the one and only Michael Hernandez, Director of Marketing for Carolina Foundation Solutions and Carolina Basement Solutions. Now, Michael and I covered a lot of ground, but one of the key concepts that we talked about was math and magic. Math and magic. Whether you're a business owner or a marketer, this is a concept that you absolutely have to understand if you want to maximize your marketing, differentiate your brand from the competition, and accelerate your business growth. So sit back, listen, learn. I hope you enjoy Michael's insights as much as I did. He's an awesome guy, a creative marketer, and really generous with his time. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're using to listen to the show. Thanks again and enjoy. Welcome to the Growth Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, maybe let's start with just an intro. Tell us about yourself and the company.
Well, I work for basically it's two companies. Actually, it's one family, two solutions, what I like to say. And it's more born and raised here in North Carolina. It is Carolina Foundation Solutions and Carolina Basement Solutions. In the basement part, we do a lot of crawl space work too, which is left out of the title of the name, but just want to make sure that people understand that we do a ton of crawl space work. The foundation side, that we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year.
Nice.
That's really huge for us. You know, it's been good. I came on as director of marketing July 12th, and
that's my birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah, just randomly.
It's a lucky day.
Like that. That's a great day for both of us.
It is a lucky day, and I can tell you, you know, I came in from being in this industry, in this business for a long time, not necessarily with the construction side and contractor side and home repair and home improvement, but just in the advertising and marketing side. You know, I've done that my whole career. And so I came in with a clean slate and I asked, where's loyalty? Where's not loyalty? Who do I have? Because you have to do an evaluation right up front of every business that you're working with, because you want to make sure you're maximizing your spend, what you're getting in return is worth it. And I did go out and do a lot of research, and I came back and met with the owner of CFS and said, hate to keep plugging you guys, but just the sheer fact that was the responsiveness and the care that they take with us far exceeds anything I've ever dealt with in this industry. You know, having that type of partner is worth more than, I don't know, it's a headache I don't have to worry about. Right. So it lets me do my job knowing that you're completely competent at what you do, more than competent. You know, the expertise, I don't have to worry about it. And I really get good advice.
Well, it's interesting. So I didn't look closely at the timeline. You know, I originally, you got on my radar. I was on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what prompted your share, and I don't have it. I should have pulled it up in front of me, but, you know, you put up a post and, or maybe we put up a post and you made a comment against the post. And, you know, we work almost exclusively with small, medium-sized businesses, which is pretty, you know, it's pretty kind of ambiguous. It's a pretty big category. We got, you know, a couple $1 million companies in revenue, and then, you know, much larger, which are still probably small, medium size in the grand scheme of the world. And I've sort of noticed over the years that, you know, you have small business owners, business leaders that work for those small businesses, and some of them sort of managed by fire. You know, it's just every call is some sort of, you know, big issue, or, you know, they think maybe we haven't done something or we have done something, and it's an interesting dynamic, and I've noticed it's sort of prevalent in the small business world. I chalk it up to someone who's wearing just a lot of hats, and they're sort of running from, you know, from fire to fire. And then there are other business owners, and again, these tend to be the people that build really just fantastic companies and scale, who are, I would just say, incredibly generous. They like to catch their partners, vendors, employees winning. They make comments, proactively,
That was the post. The post was what I
yeah,
shared was we don't become who we are alone, so to speak. And I wanted to make sure that I thanked and called out every single one of the vendors that we work with on a larger scale,
yeah,
that we consistently work with. And you guys were at the top of that list. And I wanted to make sure that you felt appreciated and noticed, which I'm sure you do, but we all know appreciation goes a long way, especially on a public forum like LinkedIn.
yeah. Well, and when people do that, every time I've had, a client where they, again, they do that kind of stuff, I'm sure that, when you do that stuff, our team would, run through a wall. I mean, I think we already have really good people who do the right thing consistently and work really hard on behalf of the clients. But when someone, goes outside sort of the norm of either nothing, crickets, and actually says, really appreciate what you guys are doing, who you are, what you do, why you do it, that kind of stuff. It's like that stuff comes up on internal calls. It's like all of a sudden you got everyone in the company's going, could I, is there a spot for me on that account team? Like, what do those guys do? That guy seems really cool. I'd like to talk to him.
Here's what people don't
It
understand.
costs you nothing,
But here's what people don't understand is it was also, it was willing to take a risk to say that, because I knew that I was going to get bombarded by every company that's your competitors.
Yeah.
Just, how LinkedIn is. And unless I will never, unless you come at me with something that makes me laugh or think, but that's rare on LinkedIn messages.
Yeah.
For me, it's who you know. And I actually knew Tyler Yost. So I forgot that he worked there at the time, but somebody said, hey, Tyler works here. And I was like, oh, wow. We rode bikes for 24 hours of booty, which is now the 24 Foundation. But
Tyler
anyway,
does all sorts of crazy stuff like that, or at least he used to.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
awesome.
I love our team. Max is a great guy. He's just such an eager person to help. David's great. Here's what I love about Blue Corona, is the fact I can say what my outcome needs to be, and you guys will go do the research and come back so I can focus on my job.
Yeah.
Which is not managing you.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about how you organize your job, and then also maybe your journey to get there. How did you go from working in the advertising world, I think maybe for an agency, to then on working on the client side, and then in particular for, a small, medium-sized business. And I know you're home, residential and commercial, but how'd you get there?
Well, it's, I'm a big believer that things happen for a reason. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly in this world. I worked for one of the great, I say this because I know him. He calls himself great, the guru, I guess. Jeffrey Gitomer. So he wrote the Sales Bible, the Lord Book of Selling. And so when I was thrown into that world, I really got to understand marketing aspect of it. When you're marketing for one and it's yourself, and you have a huge team behind you helping you do that. And he gave everyone the freedom to use their ideas. Good ideas come from everywhere. So I learned a lot working from him. We were fortunate enough, the vice president of that company and I had an angel investor, and we left and started our own company, which did really well and got bought out. And then I actually took some time off. I hate to say time off, but I formed my own business to follow a passion project, which has always been photography. I love telling stories through images. And so for me, it was a way to reconnect with people, because in the world of marketing, so I call it the math and magic, and you guys are the math part. And sometimes we lose sight of the magic these days, and everything that's driven AI and digital, that there is the human component to this. That's still the magic part. That's still somebody's designing something, a copywriter has to write, and that is the magic part. And so for me, it was reconnecting with the magic. And I've always wanted to work in an agency, and I knew the owner of this agency, and he brought me along and just said, "We want you." And it was a great fit. I enjoyed. I worked on the Napa account. That was exciting. It was really different because they work in a lot of co-ops.
Yeah.
If you learn more about Napa, it's
kind of like a small business, big business hybrid. It's a big company, but they probably operate sort of decentralized, right? Like a bunch of
very so much so is you're pretty much buying, like, in order to have the Napa name on your building, you've got to buy a certain amount of product in a way. I'm not saying it's Pampered Chef, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the Napa guys, the men and women that own those local stores are some of the best people. And so when you talk about hyper local advertising, I mean, that's tough because now you've got different markets across the country that you really have to understand and advertise and get into the marketing aspect of it. We were fortunate enough to have a good team there. And then COVID hit like it hit everyone. You got some money from the government, and then you sustained as long as you could. And then it was, okay, where do we cut? How do we cut in order to stay alive? And so I was one of the people amongst a few others that got cut in the business, but there was no animosity whatsoever because you got to do what you got to do as a business owner in a business to stay alive. At that point, I think most everybody understood in the world that that's not a personal thing. You know what I mean? Well, it's personal when you lose your position, but I learned a lot there. I learned more of where I wanted to focus. I learned where my skill sets were, that I knew they were there. I just didn't have a chance to test them out. And when I got here, the previous person that had my position, again, through LinkedIn, we were friends, go back all the way to 24 Hours of Booty. So that's how we knew each other. And she put on LinkedIn that they were advertising for that position. I said, wait, whoa, that's your job. What are you doing? She said, well, I'm moving on to this place. And so I said, that's something that's really interesting. And my wife worked for a global construction firm. So I'd been exposed to that part of it on the commercial side. When I talk commercial, I'm talking all over the world. So it was very interesting to me to take what the human part of it, the connection, how do we tell stories? And then how can I use modern data and have a firm that can do that? And so I'll go back to the whole story of once I got there, I did an evaluation and there were 3 players in it. And you were our current provider and you stayed that way for a reason,
Awesome.
And you've done nothing but great things for us. And I'm so proud of that. And hopefully we can keep giving you the tools. So it becomes that meld of math and magic, because that's what it is. If you bring people, to the horse, so to speak, you got to give them something to drink when they're there. And hopefully that magic part gives them a little bit of that.
I want to sort of double click on, on something that you said maybe just before we started recording. Your owner popped in and sort of waved, and you were talking about how, he's this amazing blend of entrepreneur with the CFO, kind of mindset. And I know, and then you've talked about sort of the concept of math and magic and sort of the analytics tracking side, but there's still that creative element that's, maybe you can't necessarily quantify, at least not always. I feel like, I guess I wanted to get your take on, how do you navigate, when you're working within a business, for the owner or for the C-suite, there's, I think digital, because there's so many things you can track, there's been a little bit of this to the man with the hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep.
where like if we, there's some things that we see some clients aren't eager to test because they're not easily quantifiable in the short term. And so they'd rather just dump the money into something that's much more, say direct response. And how do you sort of as a marketer, I guess there are two parts of it. One is how do you sort of navigate that where how do you get the, the owners of the company bought in with the magic side, even when maybe right off the bat, you're like, I don't know if this is gonna, how do you deal with that?
It is complete trust when at that level, they trust you and you trust them. It doesn't come easily. You have to earn that trust. But once it's given, it's there. And, we've had several conversations, as I said earlier, that you can't hit home runs with a bat on your shoulder. So he encourages you to try new things. He knows that you may be going up against a competitor or competitors that have national marketing dollars, that they've got what we do all across the country. We can't outspend that, right? But we can outthink that. And we can pivot, and we can pivot quickly. And with a company like Blue Corona, that helps us do that. And then we it's all in a holistic kind of organic place. Everything has to support one another in the right balance. And so we don't, rely solely on Blue Corona for what we do. We also, coming out of COVID, one of my biggest passions was we've got to get back to the humanness of who we are, because we lost that. We found that with our families because we were, as we were stuck and held up. You may be at home right now because I noticed that backdrop.
Yeah.
From every conference call I'm on.
Yeah. We're not all in the same tiny conference room.
Yeah. So it's, I think people just have that itch to get back out. And so, we rebranded a little bit, and our rebrand was, we tipped the hat to where we came from in terms of the brand. So it really has that old iconic feel of something that was in the past that was good. You look at the old like Cheerwine labels, the old 76 gas stations, that kind of stuff where it makes you smile thinking about it. And so that was what it was. And the way that our designer gave it a future forward feel to it, was just hit the nail on the head. And the magic part was, so both owners, father and son, with the son, we sat down, and I'm a whiteboard thinker. So I love to like think out ideas and write them down. And I don't hold any value in my ideas, always the right idea. And I love the more people in it, the better, because you don't know where a good idea comes from. So visually, I printed out everything, all the options we had for this brand and how it would work on the website, how it would look. So we had to take all these different things into consideration. How would it look on, on PPC? Like, how would all this stuff work in print and digital? How would it scale? So we were literally sat there on a Friday, and who likes to meet at Friday at like 4:00? No one. But I think we worked for like 3 hours going through each iteration of this brand and the different support brands below it, a shield, these different things, how would it work? How would it look? So we really thought through, and I can tell you where I learned that. Tell me if I get off track here, but so in Charlotte, there's a place called JJ Red Hots, which is a hot dog place. And I know the owner, John Luther, and I watched them from their inception. They were very smart early on. On Instagram, they tracked the very beginning of the idea all the way through to completion until what they do now. But when you come in the restaurant and you see the care that they put into like little things that are on tables or the design, the elements of it, that's got to be a good hot dog, because if you put that many, and so I asked them about like the design of the hot dog guy, JJ, and it's named after his daughter and son. They talked about grill marks on hot dog. Was it going to be 3? Was it going to be 2? Because we had like 2 meetings about it, And to me, I was, maybe because I'm different, I understand exactly what he's saying. You know, some people don't think that way and be like, I don't care, does it even matter? What's the ROI?
Yeah.
But it shows to the consumer that there's care there.
Yeah.
And if you can relate that in a way that in our business, you pull up to someone's home or the commercial site and they know that you pay attention to details, that matters. That matters
that attention to detail.
That's referrals,
Yeah.
that's safety.
Yeah.
The list goes on, you know, and you guys are great with paying attention to details. So much so I was on a call with Max and I just had so much coming in and he said, I'm just going to send you all the reports because I can tell that you're, and I was like, Max, I trust you completely. You know, in the early days, we had to have the 1 hour calls.
Yeah.
But not so much now because the trust has been built.
Yeah.
You know, and I always tell them, and they're very good at this, is just be honest with me. Come to me at the table and say, we're seeing a trend that we don't like, and here's how we want to combat it. And I'm totally okay saying we're seeing this trend, and right now our team's trying to figure out how to do it, but we're not there yet. You know, even any leader wants to know an honest assessment.
Yeah.
There's no anger or anything like that. It's like, if you don't have an answer, well, if I'm the type of person that some leaders were like, if you bring me a problem, bring me a solution. Well, that doesn't always work because they're not going to be capable.
You may never hear about that problem because they're still trying to come up with the solution. You'd like it surfaced.
And that's where I believe. And I think it was Jason Fried, or when I say it was him.
He was, he's the founder of Basecamp. I mean, it was, 37 Signals. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he made the comment about once a month in their meetings, they would invite everybody in. Because his point was, you never know where a good idea comes from.
Yeah.
And I think when I worked for Gittimer, we had a little bit of that. I think I made the comment at the time because one of the cleaning crew was coming in the office, and we worked in these, you know, these old buildings in downtown Charlotte that was when South End was becoming South End. And I think I made the comment, you know, this person may have a great idea, we just don't know it.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're working on something, you're stuck.
Yeah.
And somebody out of nowhere can, like, they could be eating a sandwich and go, have you thought about this? And everybody's like, no, wow. And that light bulb spurs the next thought and the next solution. And then all of a sudden you've been there. It's an awesome feeling.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I worked for a big company years ago, and I don't know who coined it, you know, who started calling me this, but someone started calling me the Riddler, because I would always come out of my, you know, immediate account team and just, I'd be going to lunch with a mixed group of people in different roles and just kind of throw out sort of a situation or a challenge and you know, someone would say, I'm a product specialist. Like, I don't have the faintest idea. I've never come across, you know, and I said, well, you know, just, you just never know different perspectives. You know, I would often get like two people would give two ideas that individually weren't all that helpful, but I could merge them together into a really, not just a workable idea, but something that was really great that I never would have come up with. I always think of competitive analysis, you know, as sort of like that I don't know where I got it from. Maybe the book, there's a book called Steal It Like an Artist, where
I've got it. It's a great book.
Yeah, he says like nothing comes from nowhere, you know, and so just looking at what the competitors are doing, and you're not trying to plagiarize the competitors, but you're sort of trying to get into the thinking, you know, what were they thinking to come up with that strategy? And then you see another one, and then, you know, I always then would sort of find like there's a third idea that's a riff on the two.
Well, you brought that up, and I wanted to. So I'm training for a marathon now, and this popped in my head on my run. And it's a quote by Sam Walton. You know, if listeners know who Sam Walton is, they're too young, they probably don't, but the founder of Walmart, you know, he had what basically amounted to an old general store that he turned into this conglomerate. So it's a picture of me pointing over my shoulder and an arrow, and I'm going in the opposite direction. and I posted it, and it said, if everybody is doing it one way, there's a good chance you can find your niche by going exactly in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And so that's how I tend to think, is what's everybody doing? Let's go the opposite way. I don't want to look like everybody else, because we're not everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's always been kind of my, I have this thing about me, it's go big or go home a lot of times. And I don't know where I get that from, but it's for me, it's the swing. It's let's go big. And it doesn't mean that there's not, you don't take risk evaluation and think about, the risk. You do that. You own a business. You're just not going to swing foolishly, but it's, sometimes you really got to look at the market and say, everybody is, for example, we're going through a redesign of some trucks. And when you drive down the road, it's a white vehicle, they all look the same, you can't tell the difference. And I'm like, okay, we're going to stop that. We're going to make sure that we are different. And not different in the sense that it's, you don't want the fly on top of the vehicle, the spider, or the huge Napa yellow hat, because we do take ourselves and what we do. We do take the work seriously. We don't take ourselves that seriously. We do have a good time, and it is, and a credit to the owner of the company. It is a North Carolina based company, and we serve both states, and that's unique these days. There's a lot of people that come in and buy the little guys up. And everybody that works for us is from here. I think we have, and I hate stats like this. I really do, because they really kind of don't mean something, but with everybody that works here and the experience they have, it is literally like 200 years total combined experience, in this industry, which if I'm a housewife, why do I care about that? But for me to say it, it just reminds me of the people that I work with are really skilled and talented at what they do. And a lot of times it reminds me to stay in my own lane and let them do what they're good at, but I really do love calling on you guys to ask for advice, calling on the guys that we have here, asking for advice, because you just never know where it comes from.
I saw, this is going to get a little bit creepy, Michael, so I apologize. I saw in one of your Instagram posts, and I say yours, the company's, but I do assume it was from you, because there's like part of what I think was a Mac on the side, and then you've got a couple books stacked up like a notebook, and then you've got They Ask You Answer, Marcus Sheridan's book. And I was thinking that's not like the guy overseeing your fleet of trucks. That's got to be a marketer, who's sitting on that. And I have the book. Marcus sent it to me. I kind of flipped through the first couple pages, and I'm a big content marketer, so I don't need any convincing. I think I know the gist of the book. But what I was going to ask you is, in your type of business, do you have sort of as part of your process, just talking to the office staff, the guys and gals, out on the kind of out running the jobs, and just sort of intaking the questions that they probably think are like, they get them all the time, and it's like, everyone knows that, but
it's a two-way street. I can't do my job properly unless I can talk to the consultants, our technical consultants, who are meeting with, the homeowner, or our consultants who are meeting with people that work for the state or commercial work. I've got to know what they're facing, what they're hearing. And if it's something they're hearing a lot, then I've got to do something to overcome that objection before it even happens. So it's a constant two-way street. Marketing is an inside out proposition. And I really don't do a whole lot outward unless I let people know internally what's happening. Like, here's what's going out. Is this going to resonate? I pretty much know that it will most times, but if it gets complicated, something that's, I'm punching above my weight, and it's very technical, because you have to be very specific if it's very technical in what we do, whether it's a marketing piece, whether it's, I make our own commercials, our television commercials that are, on TV and also on OTT. So I want to make sure that those will pass muster. much like if you've got somebody that's a special forces guy that's watching a movie and they're like, that's not real.
Yeah.
You know? So I just want to make sure it's authentic as possible. And, you know, one of the great things that we're doing now is, you know, I've been doing these commercials, oh my gosh, probably since December, but they're all the 10, 15-second spots. You know, that's the attention span now. You know, I will sit through on YouTube 10 seconds in order to get to what I want to watch. You know, 10 seconds is really nothing. But it's enough time for me to connect emotionally, to give them the brand. I want them to feel a certain emotion, whether it's laughter, joy, the connection of home, whether it's urgency. The one thing we don't ever do in our business is operate using fear. We have competitors that do that. And I was told on day one that that's something that I will never market to that way. I will market facts, but I will never use fear as a marketing tactic because it is very short-term thinking. And to go back to Sheridan, you know that you should know this internally that this goes out a long place. So I'll just sometimes you don't want to share exactly what you're doing, so your competitors don't really hear it.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the long story short is, so when I used to work for Jeffrey Gimmer, his speaker manager was Michelle Joyce, who worked with me, and I've known her for years. So she basically turned me on to him. And then, you know, I didn't need to be told what he was preaching. You know, I was a convert before he even wrote that book. But there's a special way that what he did at River Pools and Spa, that we are taking it, adapting to what we do, and we're running with it. So much so that I work in the Charlotte office. I'm in wonderful Burlington, North Carolina today to start on this project. And the beautiful part is, this is where the math and magic comes in. I get to do what I'm really good at, and having the conversation with Max and what y'all are building for me to realize this dream is awesome. You know, that's you know, that's where we're going to make it.
What I mean, what are the things, like, I guess, again, a two-parter. One is, what are you reading or listening to try to, you know, sort of keep up with sort of the current state of marketing and sort of how things are evolving? And then what are some of the questions or things that you're, you know, maybe just asking yourself, you know, internally as it relates to like what's coming down the road, what's around the next, you know, corner? What are some of the things that you're
I am always forward thinking. You know, people that know me know I'm a creative. You know, I could go through my stats of what was the Clifton Strength Finders. My top 5 is all about ideation and all of that. But right now, I've really been digging into lots of data. I need that data across both states, and both states are very antiquated in terms of they have this data that I need. They just don't have a way to capture it. You know, so whether it's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Mecklenburg County, when you do a property search and you say, I look up your house and it shows down there and it says foundation type, and it will give you whatever type it is. That's not a searchable feature. There is no way that I can go grab that information and find out unless I go through the maze of bureaucracy that is state and local governments. So I'm doing the best I can now, working with some realtor friends to gather all this info. So that helps me make intelligent choices and decisions about where we're going to point. I've already gone through, when I first started, was researching the soils of North and South Carolina, because that does determine, you know, what homes, in different areas. And so we have a great person here who just loves data. Her name's Rachel. So she gave me layer after layer of data laid on a Google map. And it was just like, Christmas
treasure
time.
map.
It was, because you get to, there's stories in data. There really are. And on your side, you guys know it, that data does tell a story if you're there to look.
Yeah.
And if you lay that on a map, now I can visually see what types of foundations, where the work's coming from, where it needs to go. For what I listen to and read, are really just whatever tickles my fancy at the time. Whatever podcast, like I'm a big podcast guy. And I can't think of his name now because it comes up, so I just listen and don't look at it.
Yeah.
But it's actually the name of the podcast is Math and Magic. It
Oh,
is
that's
the founder.
iHeartRadio.
Yeah, that's right. It's the founder of MTV. So he, being the founder of MTV, has the breadth and knowledge he has in his network to people. So pre-COVID, he was doing it nonstop. Somebody like yourself, that you've got a solid business, it's running itself. You can now start to explore what you're doing. And that's what he was doing, and bringing all these guests on, people that even people deep in the marketing world probably wouldn't know. And to gain that knowledge, again, that little light bulb, that's what I need, is just that little nugget. But right now, I think the name of the book I'm reading is called Not a Hero.
Okay.
And
who is that?
Mark Bowen or Owen, a buddy of mine, one of our vendors recommended it. And it is about mindset and the 3-foot rule, paying attention to what's in 3 feet of your area.
Okay.
And it came from when this Navy SEAL was training, and he was with an alpinist, and they were teaching them how to climb rock face, and he locked up and froze. He was so scared. And the alpinist basically told him, you need to focus on 3 feet, 3 feet around you, you know? And in our world, sometimes we think too much big picture and not what's 3 feet around us.
Yeah.
And I try to use that analogy and look, what's 3 feet around my customer? What's 3 feet around the single mom that's got 2 jobs, that something's wrong with her foundation, something's wrong with her crawl space. What's she going through? What message is going to resonate? To me, the messaging is huge. And, you know, you're speaking to so many different customers. In order to write the correct message, it's extremely tough. But that's where you guys come in, because I can write multiple messages and they're seen by the right people. And what you want is, not everybody needs our service as soon as they see that ad, or they feel us somewhere out there in the ether. What you want them to do is remember that, so when they do need us or need a service like ours, they remember and they come back.
You know, you mentioned YouTube earlier, and sort of the time, you know, people's attention span, and then, you know, now talking about kind of matching the right message to the right audience. One of the better YouTube commercials I saw, meaning I didn't skip, you know, almost as quickly as you could skip it. I watched these big wave surfing videos with my son. Neither one of us surf, but, you know, we love the beach. But, you know, waves of Cape Hatteras is about the biggest I've ever seen. And I don't even know that I went out on that day. I just sat on the beach and went, man, like, that's some serious stuff out there.
Yeah.
I love watching those huge wave videos. And so before one of the videos was loading, it was Laird Hamilton, who's like famous, you know, big wave surfer.
I know he is, yeah.
And he's kind of coming down this huge face. And, you know, we had selected a video about, you know, big waves, but it didn't have to do with Laird and wherever this spot was that he was in this opening. And then it transitioned into, it was a Mazda commercial, but they were sort of connecting with Laird, and Laird as a, you know, as a
icon,
pioneer, you know, of this big wave surfing, and what it takes to be like fully committed and all this stuff. And then it was like, you know, again, it was like a Mazda 3 commercial or something. And I just remember thinking, like, the ability for their marketing team to sit there and say, what I didn't find, which would have been really cool, is if I was then watching like a downhill, you know, mountain bike video, and then they had a similar but different creative for that, you know, content. But I remember thinking, gosh,
campaign,
really,
like a thought out campaign. Yeah. So that's good, because that's basically they're connecting lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love lifestyle ads. I've done the right way in lifestyle marketing, because you know better than most that people will tell you, as a marketer, people will lie to you. They will tell you, oh, I buy on facts and figures. Well, studies after studies and human nature is you don't. You buy on emotion, and then you grab those facts and figures to support
and to
that
justify, to justify this very
I
emotion.
mean, we all know that, but it's funny that you brought up that commercial, because I love, like, I will go down a rabbit hole of old commercials just to watch, to see what they were like and how to the point they got. Sometimes we get lost in the aesthetics of something, and it's, well, we can do it because we can do it because we're cool. But are you selling something? Where's the product? What's going on? So, what we do, at this point, I'm starting to draw a larger campaign plan for what we want to do. And it will get more into a lot of the products and services, but it's how do we creatively do that? That's just not, I hate to say this, but there used to be a guy in Charlotte. He had we're dealing for his car dealership, and everybody, I mean, it stuck, but I just don't want to be like that kind of,
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names about companies I could compare it to, but I don't want bad emails and phone calls and stuff like that. But again, it goes back to the Sam Waltman quote: is if everybody's going one way, chances are going the opposite direction or a different way is probably going to set you apart. And the niche and the ladder, it's like, where can we find, another space that we can play in? Was it Hertz? Not exactly, or whatever it was, number 2 back in the 80s. They knew they couldn't be number 1, so they went for number 2. That marketing worked.
Yeah.
And had a conversation with somebody yesterday about Coke was, because of the times that we live in, they weren't coming out to say that Coke is the GOAT. It was like hemming and hawing about it. And we were like, what a beautiful campaign. If they just came out and played the long term of this, that if you like Coke or not, it is the GOAT soft drink that there is. It is from the beginning of time, as we know it, in terms of marketing and advertising, all the way through. Now they show all these different images where Coke is in pop culture, it's on a president's desk, it's like everywhere, to Tom Brady drinking, whatever it is, it's the GOAT. And I was like, man, I like boldness. Be bold. Be bold in all that you do. Being bold doesn't mean lack of humility. It's just being bold in your decision making and taking that risk. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Trust me, I've seen some numbers on some of the marketing I've put out, and I'm first to stand up and say that was a miss. But with digital, you can easily track it and measure it, and you can pull it down if it's not working. And if it's working, you can add a little bit to it. But I want to go back, because I think I hopped over something that you said. What a lot of companies, they'll stick in safety what works. And your team will tell you that I don't operate that way. Just from being somewhat in this business for long enough, I know for anything to work, it's going to take 90 days for me to see any kind of shift, even a smaller shift. So I will invest 90 days and give it time to work. I mean, corn doesn't grow in, one day. So you've got to give it time to do what it's supposed to do. And then after that, it's sitting down with people much smarter than me in that area, which is why we hire you, and having those intelligent conversations, and me not being afraid to say, stop, I don't know what you're referring to in this. Explain to me.
Yeah.
And that's, the team's great on that.
It's funny. There's so many things that you've mentioned, again, going all the way back to the owners of your company, and then your mindset on trying different things. If everyone's going one way, go the opposite. Just, it's amazing how many there's those characteristics. I mean, the things you're talking about, like the willingness to try things, to not punish failure, meaning someone does something that doesn't work, it's like you're fired, as opposed to what can we learn from it, trying again. But then, but sort of balanced with the trust of, you've got to earn trust by being really capable at what you do, or you don't get, you won't have the trust to try different things. But it's amazing how many of those things are common, to the clients that we've had that have been so successful with however they define success, whether it's growing and scaling, or, just being there year after year after year as like a great, sometimes family-owned business versus, again, we kind of look at our clients as like we have sort of the thrivers and the strivers. The thrivers are folks that just, again, running world-class business, doing really well. They've got a lot of what you're talking about, maybe not exactly, the same way, but they've kind of got that almost baked into the culture of the company. And then we have the strivers who see some of those companies, maybe in an ancillary market and say like, I'm this size and I want to grow to become like that. And, part of what we always try to do is like, sort of, who do you want to sort of evolve the mindset of that small business owner, to see those things. Because we have so many times where someone, starts a campaign and like 3 weeks in, they're ready to just scrap the whole thing, because they haven't gotten. And again, it's all the same. It's like cliched stuff, like, the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. All these things that you just use to try to get them to just. And some, to their credit, do, they go through that evolution, and then others, they've gone through 12 agencies in 3 years, and think all of stuck.
And I want to go back to I want to clarify that, we have a strategic plan, but built into that plan is room enough for creativity and room enough to take chances. So it's not like you're just going out and does this stick, does this stick? That's no way to operate. And I certainly don't operate that way. But it is the ability to, where you want to go, and there's a plan to get there. But within that plan, as you say, there's baked in risk that you're allowed to take. And if it starts to pay off, which with our partners, whether it be TV or you guys, I can start to see numbers. And then as a marketer, you kind of want to sit down with some other people to figure out, okay, what's making this tick? I'm running one commercial now, and a lady who is at the station in Greenville, South Carolina, out of nowhere, she sends me a message. And she said, I just want to let you know that when I'm at home and I see your commercial, I just laugh every time I see it, because it's designed that way. And I said, you just made my day, because I made you smile, I made you laugh, and then I hit you with the message and the branding. And it's a short, compact 15-second commercial. So that's the job I did. So when you need us, you're going to remember that, So that, for me, I was going to see if I can find something here, because there's something hanging on our wall in our offices, and it actually became part of our brand guide. So if I can pull it up real quick, and I'm going to stumble as I talk to you while I search.
Well, and also just as a make a mental note, send it to me afterwards, and when in post-production we can put it in a way that kind of helps you make it smoother, I guess.
Oh yeah, well, I'll pull it up right now. It's part of our brand guide, and it really is. It's based on. Are you familiar with David and Goliath?
Yeah.
So
broadly speaking.
Well, not that part. The actual ad firm.
Oh, I don't know.
So maybe they just shortened it to Goliath, but
I think so. Yeah.
Or D&G. They only work with upstarts. And so I just went through, and I've always loved them as a company, and their owner wears a pork pie hat. He's just super cool, super knowledgeable, and he works with companies that, they're mission driven, and usually a purposeful mission. And so ours is, we are stronger than me. Great work is everyone's job. All in, all the time. Honesty is not optional. Be a mentor, not a manager. Your character does matter. Serve with integrity. Be kind. Do what you love, even if it's not here. And then join the family and not the company. And so that's hanging in our office. It's part of our brand guide. And that's definitely a nod to David and Goliath. And I will make sure that I send you the information so you have that. So I want to make sure that I give credit where credit's due. But I just couldn't say it better than him. So why try to put on my thinking hat and rewrite something that this guy said and call it my own versus, no, we're using this is good.
It's, it's no different than when, than when a band, someone was just telling me, I don't remember the band and the example. It might have been I think it was the Foo Fighters, where they were at a small, 400 or 500 person audience, it was like friends and family. It was like kind of a separate gig to a big gig that they were playing.
Yeah. And
Dave Grohl, who's from Northern Virginia, I'm in Maryland right now, so he grew up not far away, kind of said to the crowd, is there anyone in here that doesn't like AC/DC? And, like one or two guys, I think like one guy raised his hand in this small place, and then Dave pointed at him and was like, this is why you're wrong. And then he plays, a cover. But sort of to your point, it's like, when someone's made a song, or done something that's just perfect, it's like, again, and when you replay it, I have no doubt that when you guys execute those value statements, as you live them through the business or as you project them in the marketing, they're going to become authentic. It's like, again, there's your flavor of it. That would be different if, like, I was about to well up when you're reading through those, because I think about our team, when you say some of those things, and but the way that we would manifest those would just be a little bit different. It'd be a little bit Blue Corona, and that would be our flavor to it.
So, I love that when I read it. It's on their wall when you walk in. It's huge. But it was just something that's always personal to me. It's something that I wasn't going to apply on people here. But the longer I worked, I think when I first started, I wrote 90 days on a tablet, and I said, listen, learn, which is, obviously asking questions, but it's not imposing my thoughts, my brand of marketing onto a company. I've got to become part of the culture. And sure enough, what was on that wall was part of this culture. And it really is, everyone fights for everyone that works here, that they're your brother and sister. And it's remarkable to work for a company, and that comes from the top. That really does come from the top. And if I'll give you an example, I won't name names except for the owner. If you've been working extremely hard, and he will tell you, you need to take Friday off. He may not tell you why, but you do what Mr. Chet says. But it's like, in order to be good for us, you've got to be good for yourself. And that's, I think corporate America is so lost in that, especially when you read about the guys that you're coming back to Wall Street, or you're coming back to our office, and if you don't, you're fired. They missed the whole shift that happened during COVID. And you saw people that were quitting. We're like, sorry, I can go to this company, work from home, make the same amount of money. They weren't asking the questions. They weren't getting to the why. And if they addressed the why, people would have come back. Corporate America is different than it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or it feels like yesterday and 20 years ago, all at the same time.
That stuff strikes me. That like tone deafness strikes me the same way. I get tons, I'm sure you get a bazillion emails. I get a bazillion email solicitations, and it's just there's always an element I was like, I talked to our team at one point about, our business development team, who was like doing an email campaign. And I said, sign me up for it. I want to see the emails that are going out. And I took their email. You said you're a visual guy. I took one of their emails and I took all these solicitation emails that I get.
Yeah.
All of which use the, marketing automation, AI, who's Ben Landers, let's customize this email for him.
Yeah.
They're horrible. And so I was kind of showing it to our team, from the standpoint of like, this is what all of the people you're trying to reach, they're no different than me. They're getting the same crappy emails from our competitors and companies in other industries. And so this is what you gotta be the opposite. And so, and a lot of it would come back to not using, the automation tools. It's like if everyone's using the tools like Dear, insert Ben, I saw you made the Inc. 5000, fill in number of times. A company like fill in the blank Blue Corona could really use, we could help you save, fill in X%.
Yep.
It's like if you send shit like that, you're just crushing you're killing our brand. Like I can't stand the people to do that.
You're killing any goodwill that you've ever created with that customer.
Yeah.
And you're not paying respect to the customer because they're smarter than that.
Yeah. But it's also like saying my time as the business development person is more valuable than your time. The person I'm trying to get your attention, but I can't be bothered to really like learn anything about you. I'm going to use this tool that I pay nothing for. My company pays for it. To fake it. It's just terrible. But anyway, it's like as tone deaf as those comments of like, you're coming back in the office no matter what.
That's the tool. Instead of that email, pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah.
Invite them to lunch, or whatever they're willing to do, coffee, or if people still want a safe distance, that's fine too. But people want to have that connection again. And, we did something, we had a seminar in Burlington and in Charlotte, and it was credit hours for engineers. And I chose on the front end to email each one of them, personally. Now that's a lot, but I wanted them to know they were not getting a canned message. Now, did the script stay the same? A little bit. Did I rewrite it some for based? Yeah, I did, but they knew it was actually coming from a human being and not like MailChimp or some other thing. When I sent the congratulations, you passed, or you went through this and thank you and all that stuff, that went through MailChimp. But I think, and maybe you'll disagree, but at some point in your business, you have to determine what is relational versus what is ROI. And some things you just have to say, I don't need the measurement on that. That's a relational thing, part of our business, and it should stay that way. Because some businesses, they want to measure every little thing. And, I get the willingness to want to do that. But if you get caught in that trap of measuring everything, now there's lots of things you should measure as a business owner, and we do that. But if you just get down into the minutia of it, you're stifling creativity. It's just, you become a machine.
We used to have a report for our business, interestingly called the Master Report.
Yeah.
We started it early, kind of maybe the first year or two after we started the business. And Caitlin Palacarola, who's our director of finance, she's like a mathematical Excel data wizard. And so she started building it. It was basically everything you could ever want to know about our business. Like, when did a customer come on? What was the marketing source? What do they spend? What's the profitability? And then we have it about the employees, like employees, birthday, where they're from, do they have a pet? I mean, everything. And unfortunately, we didn't have some fancy, Oracle ERP. This was all being inputted, sort of manually.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, there were things that came out of that, having that data, knowing our employees, knowing our customers, knowing our niche, that kind of stuff that was really powerful. But I remember at one point that spreadsheet started breaking. because it was just so big and so many tables, relational
Yeah.
tables. And Bob Perini, my original business partner, Harvard MBA, and engineering guy, Bob was like going through it, and he's very complimentary to Caitlin at what she had built. And then he kind of on the side said to me, like, like, how are you ever going to use some of this stuff? Like, give me 3 ways you've used the data in this table over the last 10 years. And I was like, and he's like, Ben, it's like one thing to be data driven, but like, it's again, you can take it to such an extreme where you've lost the forest. You're lost, Ben. And so we did like an 80-20. We said, of all this data that we collect, what's the 20% that drives 80% of these decisions that we're making? And we look at that as like weeding the garden. So, and we do the same thing on the marketing side. We've gotten to the point sometimes where we're, just drowning in data. Mike Wilson, our president's good at saying, like, you guys are all wrapped around the axle.
Yep. You're too much in the business sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's, that's why we always recommend about, going outside of the bit. Like, you're experts at what you do. We're experts at what we do. And so why would we try to recreate what you do internally here and spend the money and do that? Why would I try to do a lot of these different things when I can just go out and grab an expert to do it? Mm-hmm. That's humility that comes from the top, versus I love to figure things out. I like to figure out puzzles. To me, like the data that you had, and he was right, like, where would you ever use this? But I do know that Blue Chrono is doing something that's maybe it'll come out a little later than anticipated, but I will have a management dashboard for what I'd love in the morning, like give me a dashboard of stuff that I need to see in a visual way when I have my coffee. So I can see, an interactive pie chart or whatever it is to let me just know that the campaigns that matter to me, I get to see. Now I choose if I want to go deeper. That to me is gold, because what matters to me changes based on the campaigns and where we're rolling. And sometimes you don't necessarily have those conversations all the time with your partner. Now, Max and I, try to meet once a month, which is, it's good. And when David meets with us, that dude's just incredible. Although I have to tell him, I don't think he's caffeinated, but I'm like, slow down. It's all good. We're having a conversation. Just relax, breathe. But you do have a really good team. And I love the fact humility matters to me. And they will say, I don't know, but I will get you that answer. And that's huge to me. I love people, like I say that all the time. I don't know, but I'll get you that answer. And I try to respond to everyone. I may not give you the answer that you want that day, but I will let you know that I received your email and that I'm on it before midnight that night. Mm-hmm. And I heard about that when I was younger from a CEO, I want to say of Marriott, that he responded. I may have the hotel wrong, but it was that type of chain, that huge. So imagine a CEO of that type of corporation. He answers every email that he gets before midnight that night, same day.
That's incredible. I met I want to come back to one thing related to Tyler before I forget. I just don't want to forget, but I want to say one thing, which is I was at a networking event once with a bunch of CEOs, and the founders of Wedding Wire were there, right? And Wedding Wire was headquartered or is headquartered in Chevy Chase, Maryland. So again, my neck of the woods. And Blue Corona had gotten to a size, we might have had like 80 employees or something at the time. And one of our employees had left to go work as a data scientist for Wedding Wire. And yeah. I run in these owners, and they were saying, "Oh, we're with Wedding Wire," and I said, "Oh, I know your business well. One of our guy, we lost a great guy to you guys. I'm sure you don't know him because you got 800 employees." And the guy, Tim Chi, said, "What's his name?" And I said, "He's a entry to mid-level guy, a couple years out of college." His name's Sean Kelly, and he goes, "I know Sean. I know exactly where he sits." And he's like rattling off things where he's clearly like interacted with Sean. And I, at that point, had said to him, like, "How many employees do you have?" And he said 800. And I said, "Man," because I was at 80, like I'm starting to get to that size where like I see people when I go down to Charlotte or I go, and I don't necessarily I'm not sure. I think I know who it is, but I'm not 100% it is. Did she go to Clemson or USC? Like, I don't want to mess that up, like, and he's like, you need to do better. Because he's like, at 800, I know them all. And I was like, I don't think I'm that smart. I could probably get to like 250. I can't get to 800.
One of my former clients was Liberty Mutual. So we dealt with them on their top tier consultants, the people that worked with Disney and Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, they're the original insurance company. Liberty Mutual is a Coca-Cola. So we would fly into Boston all the time to meet up there. They were big to take us to Fenway games. Absolutely love Boston, love Fenway, love the Red Sox, just love that whole town. I'm a history buff. So that's the cradle of, America right there, which is awesome. But to a T, the men and women that worked there would tell you the stories. The CEO, and I want to say he's Irish, he would meet like a middle manager that he met a year ago at some event. And he wouldn't have somebody whispering in his name, like in a line when you're meeting the president. They're like, that's he knew him. And it was almost like, if you've ever watched 41 on 41, the story of George H.W. Bush, he never forgot people's names, their spouses, their kids, so much so that when his son became president, he was walking back in the White House, and people don't realize that the people that work at the White House, they stay there through presidents. Some of them have been there since, if you saw the movie The Butler, since like Truman. He stopped and asked one of the, I want to say valets or whatever the title was, called him by name, called his wife by name and his kids. How were they doing? Were they in college yet? That's the kind of person that he was and it's just amazing. Like I never forget a face. And I try to do all those things. Like I'll say your name back to you. I'll do all that, but it's just, some people are born with it.
Yeah.
Before, I got a piece of advice I want to share before we wrap up. So if you're familiar with Marshall Goldsmith, the leadership coach. So we did, in a former life, we worked with him and created his learning library for his organization. So his right-hand man, this guy started at Berkeley, Frank Wagner, smart guy, but he could take the complex and break it down into, just the simplest forms. So we were talking one day, we were all meeting at my partner's house, all around this table. Just paper, we flip charts and just brainstorming and going all this stuff. And I still have this message is from a long time ago. And I said, can you send me what you said today again? And he sent it to me through LinkedIn. And he said, you have a better memory than I do. I enjoyed reading your message and doing the memory lane thing. So he says, I think what you're looking for is this. And so it's a decision-making matrix. And I've used this and it's worked. And I feel bad that I can't just say it off the top of my head, but I always go back to it. Is this going to help our customers? Is this going to help our company or our organization? Is this going to help achieve our results? Is this going to help my team as a leader? Is this going to help me as a leader? If the answer to all these is yes, then you have the permission to just do it. If the answer is no to any one of them, then take time to reflect before deciding to act. So get to yes on all those and then move forward. And that is how you empower your employees. If they can get to yes on all, you don't need to go asking for permission, because then it becomes this whole hierarchy of, which doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve the customer. If you have simplicity at its finest, it says, if you hire good people first. And if they can answer yes to those questions, they know that they're supported by the company and can move forward with it. And that's very empowering for them.
That's a much better company to work for. It serves the customer, serves the company, and it's a much more rewarding place to work than, sort of the command and control, having to run everything up the flagpole.
It's so funny. I know we've had this huge conversation that has gone from marketing to these different types of things. And it's sad that we don't do this anymore, because most people's pay is direct deposit. So you don't see a paper check anymore. But I always want people to remember, that next to the owner's name or whoever signs the check, there should be in the memo a customer's name. Because in all actuality is that customer is paying your salary. No one else is, that customer is. And so for you to see that customer name is huge.
That's a really cool, like I never thought, I'm very much in support of the principle, but in terms of just a constant like drumbeat, like with every 2 weeks or whatever, however, frequency people are paid, having that reminder.
Yeah,
kind of
it is. And maybe because I know when I get a direct deposit, there may be a memo that states the date or whatever it is. But have a customer name in there. And it just lets you know those names start to mean things to you.
Yeah.
That's how you don't lose sight of who you're serving, because you're not serving yourself. Ultimately, yes, you are, because you're in business and you have to make a profit. You have to provide for your family. But the only way to do that is to make the customer, happy.
Right. I always get it. Annoyed isn't quite the right word, but I'll see like Richard Branson or someone on, again, LinkedIn sort of saying like, take great care of your employees, and then they'll take great care of your customers. So it's like employees first versus customers. And I guess as someone coming from kind of a sales and marketing background, and then, an entrepreneur, I always jokingly think there is no company, there are no employees without a customer. So if like you're talking about chicken and the egg, you have a customer, then and then usually it's you, the entrepreneur, serving the customer. And then if you're lucky enough to get a second customer, maybe you hire, so, and I totally get it. I mean, we try to treat our employees, show them by action, not just words, how much we appreciate, and love them. But it's not like this or that,
what is in business. So it's if you're a married man, then that when people say, well, marriage is a 50% it is not. What it is you may be pulling 80 at some point and your spouse is doing 20, and it can completely reverse. And any configuration of those numbers, that's how it is. And it's almost like if you're driving a truck and you balance all 4 tires, eventually one of them becomes unbalanced, and you've got to work on that while everything else is running smoothly. And then all of a sudden the back one's doing. And so it is that type of game. But, to think that anybody that writes down it's this or that, or thinks they have a solution, there's like, I'm a sucker for good motivational stuff. But I'm also very wary of the woo-woo and some of that stuff that goes out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you've ever read anything by Dan Harris, the guy that was the ABC News anchor and Nightline.
I loved his book.
10% Happier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. The way it resonated with me for the fact that he was like, I'm not buying into any of that stuff. I'm
like, I live in New York City. It's like a fight to the top, and you're telling me like to just like chill out, not worry about getting the promotion.
Yeah, exactly. But that 10%,
to the point where it's helpful, he's like, is it helpful to worry, more, and like take it to the point where it's helpful, but when it becomes, debilitating, it's like you got to learn to, to take your foot off the gas.
We had 2, I'll wrap my end up with this, but we had 2 clients. I won't say one because I don't think I'm allowed to say the one, just sort of the agreement that I signed, but the other one was Ferguson, plumbing and all that home stuff. And it was basically the same theme that we used for both, which was, one step further, one choice further, take that one extra mile. And then what we did was we broke it down into people could see dollar amounts. People could see what's that one extra call, that one extra step. Then we showed them examples. We did case studies of where that one extra thing led to something good for them, for the customer, whatever it was. And so it was something that's like, break it down into its simplest form and then put a story behind it, because people love a good story. And then it resonates internally, at least. And so people were like, okay, I don't have to do this big thing, this big I don't have to walk in a wall of all motivational jibber jabber. It really was just as simple as go that one extra step, that one extra mile. I think for Ferguson, we use the extra mile because that was an internal thing that they liked, but we started to quantify it a little bit so people could say, oh, there is a payoff for that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get lost in, does it work?
Yeah.
And we showed them that it did, and it caught on. And so it became really a part of their culture, much like if you follow MLS soccer. So when our team started, the first game sell out 75,000 people at Bank of America Stadium, which is more than we get for the football team lately. The mic went dead. This was all over the news. It was ESPN, it made national news. I mean, it was just viral for like 3 days. So it's dusk, the lights are on, the mic goes dead during the national anthem. Everybody it was much like, if you remember after 9/11 at the Yankee game, when before the president came out to throw the first pitch, and they sang it with that much enthusiasm and passion. And since, I think we've had 4 or 5 home games since, that's a new tradition that's taken place.
That's awesome.
All because of an unplanned glitch, or it could be if you're marketing guy. I would have planned that glitch, hoping that would have happened.
Yeah.
And it happened. And I mean, I see, of course, what I do, I follow a lot of social media. And so I saw that event from 1,000 different camera angles from their phones with kids. One guy was showing his kid, had his hand over his heart, and he was singing, "Daddy, look, the flag like we have hanging in our house," and to me, we have a new tradition for the team. To me, that was awesome. I mean, you've got up near your area, but south, Virginia Tech plays Enter Sandman for the football, and you've got all these things, but this was just organic, man. And I love the way things spring up organically.
I was going to say those are the best. That it really is the magic.
It is. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, this was awesome, Michael. I really appreciate you taking the time. And where can people learn more about the companies and or get in touch with you? Maybe you don't want
No, seriously, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Michael Hernandez. Reach out. Listen, I don't mind. If you want to have a conversation like we had today, I'm more than happy, because I love what I do for a living and willing to talk. If you want to sell me something, don't bother. Just seriously, I'm happy with who we've got right now, and I'm not changing anybody. You can also go to carolinabasement.com or carolinafoundation.com. And from there, you can go everywhere. And actually, I'm going to give you guys a pat on the back, because the challenge of with so many different locations in North and South Carolina, it is having people leave reviews somewhere. So what we did, Blue Corona did, is we gave our customers the option of where they wanted to leave the review. So when they get on our page, they get to select whether it's Better Business Bureau, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Google. I can't remember the last one, but then it takes them to their area. So then it becomes very local. When people start to, so it's perfect. And kudos to Blue Corona for coming up with that.
Well, again, we appreciate your business. Thank you guys for being a customer.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.